We're live, everybody. That was a very long hold. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's Tuesday, September 26th. I haven't done this in a while. 1 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Yep, Borgahan's telling me I'm correct. Thank you all so much for joining us. Special crew today. We got Tony, we got Alex, we got Mimi, we got Not Legal Advice / Richard / Bob / everybody else that exists on planet Earth. We may get a couple more folks from the community in here as well. Thank you all so much for joining us out there in the community live. If you're watching this live, obviously on recording, thank you so much for stopping in. We haven't done a live stream in a long while, but I'm super excited to be joined by the community today. So we're going to talk about this book right here, which I don't have the little protective thing on it because I don't know if you guys find the same thing with these books, but the protective thing is annoying. He's got it. Here, I'll show the spine. Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. This is like a freaking book club meeting right now. We're going to talk about our findings from the book, what we found interesting. Mimi's gone already. I'm sure she'll be back. She's like, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Our findings, what we found fascinating, what we found to be worthy of discussion. And as you're in the comments section below, feel free to chip in as well. We love to have folks throwing in their ideas and what they thought. Have a conversation as well amongst yourselves if you'd like while we discuss the book. And then at the end, we'll do a Q&A session. So make sure you're around for that. So before we even start, let's go around and ask how everybody's doing. We'll start with Tony and go around. Tony, how you been, man? Maybe some top level takeaways from the book, and then we'll get the conversation started as we go around the horn.
I've been doing all right, been hanging in there. My biggest takeaway from the book, at least what stands out to me right now is the feeling of like how much Kimball kind of moderates some of the rough edges, or at least there are several chapters I read in that. And then also some of the insights into like Elon's family life was very interesting. At least that's the biggest part that was most foreign to me. There was definitely part of it that felt like by being so dialed in to the Tesla story and just like all of our daily news updates, like, oh yeah, this is like a compilation of all these other stories that have trickled in over the months. So there was a lot of stuff that I remembered and wasn't that new, but the stuff about his family was very new.
Alex, how you doing? What's your top takeaway?
Well, I've been doing well. It's been a good summer. Top takeaways from the book. It was interesting. He didn't get Elon's algorithm until after production hell. So you get to see the Tesla and SpaceX, and they went through the struggles, and then very close to bankruptcy and like the production ramp of the Roadster and the Falcon 1 program and it failing and just being, and then in production hell, he had the algorithm. So after that, like the Starship and the Raptor and Twitter and all these other things, he has a game plan now. And that was interesting, that the difference between the before and after.
Richard, what are yours, man? You're muted. You're so out of practice.
I know. I was being so polite. Good morning to everyone. Nice to be here. By the way, the past, present, and future walk into the bar. It was tense.
Wow. Okay, 7 out of 10. That was pretty good.
Okay.
I've missed you.
All right. So kind of what struck me was two things. What a piece of work his dad was, Errol the scumbag, as I call him. And it made me think of, I had a friend whose father was a racist, and he was pretty open about it. And my friend was not like his father, but he was impacted by his father. So his views were different than mine. So I'm not saying that it came through, but it certainly impacted him. And I think the impact of his father on how he conducts himself and how he sees success and what drives him. I think that's what struck me the most.
Lastly, Mimi.
Yeah, I've been fine. We've been doing a lot of work around the house, and it's been raining a lot. So a big freeway kind of moved 70 meters the other day. So now the whole traffic from Oslo to the continent is blocked. So it's been a lot of rain, but it also means a lot of cheap electricity. So today I'm paying nothing for the electricity. So that's good. I think the book I've read everything about Elon before. So the first half was kind of boring and I wasn't too crazy about the way he wrote. I almost don't dare say that, but it was a little bit, I've written this a little bit too staccato. It was short. But when we got into Twitter and all that, the book lifted and I think it was a lot more interesting. I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, this is such a great book. You can use it as a role model for leadership. And that scares the hell out of me. I think it was sad. I left the book with a sad feeling for Elon. A lot of impact from his father, and he's becoming more and more like his father from time to time. A little kid who always has to prove himself. He doesn't want to be alone. He lives his life like a video game, and does incredible things for the planet.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in everything that everybody said. We can deep dive each one, or just let's see where the conversation goes. I'm like, we've never done a book review before, right? As a group, so I feel like this is going to be like sort of shooting from the hip a little bit. But I think sort of what you brought up, Mimi, is very interesting, because at the core of the book for me is sort of that is I think there are things in the book that are very eye-opening if you're looking to sort of pick Elon's brain from a business building perspective and apply it to say the core principles like the algorithm and the other stuff that they outlined. I think as long as that's executed at a high level, I do think there's things in there that are very easy to take away from and apply it to your own methodology. But I do agree that like the thing that struck me the most is I wouldn't be surprised if Elon suffers from tremendous amount of anxiety, because it really does seem like the existential nature, how he views his businesses to be existential. I don't think it's I used to think that some of it, like I still thought he believed it, but some of it was sort of like, it's good to almost have an image so that I can rally their troops and really get everybody behind the mission. But the more I read through how he was raised, and he was on vacation and all he can do is play video games for like a day, and then the next day he has to go back to work because he feels like he has to go back to work. To me, that describes a lot of the sort of and I'm not a psychologist, but it really does seem like he lives in a world of anxiety, because if he feels like he's not working, that everything's going to fall apart, and then his purpose no longer exists, which sometimes puts him in a situation where his businesses supersede everything else, which is what could present a lot of the problems that we saw in the book. So I think a lot of the things that you outlined were fascinating. Who wants to take this from here? Because we can keep this very open. I was gonna go really quickly. So yeah, I was gonna just go on what you were saying. You have to have an extremely obsessive nature, which he, exemplifies every day. But what I was going to say is the bigger takeaway for me, this is the biggest takeaway, to get somebody who can cause this much disruption on the planet. You need some guy who has Asperger's syndrome, has an abusive father, comes up from a ridiculous childhood. It's really, what Mimi was saying, it's a sad state of affairs. And you need like an extreme set of facts to generate it, because you have to have somebody who's capable of carrying that off too. But it focused him. It so focused him on proving somebody wrong. To me, it's really sad. And notwithstanding what you were saying, I think he must suffer from the depression, because
I would think, on one hand, he thinks he's, I believe he really does think this, by the way. On one hand, he believes he's trying to save the planet and he's doing amazing things. On the other hand, he gets shit constantly and, just daily stuff. Just like the DOJ going after him last week or whatever. And that must be a tough dichotomy to live with. When you, on one hand, believe you're trying to save the planet, on the other hand, people are not recognizing what you're doing. Notwithstanding whether you agree with them or not, it must be extremely difficult. And again, that's kind of the greater message I got, is the sadness the guy must live with for somebody who does so much greatness to the planet.
Who wants to tackle onto that?
Can I just say a short thing? One of the most gripping moments in interviews with Elon is when Neil Armstrong was so opposed to SpaceX getting money that they were going to deal with a private company, and the interviewer asked him about it, and he was actually crying because Armstrong was such a hero for him, and Armstrong didn't want to have anything to do with SpaceX, and Elon was crying, and it just broke my heart because he's just a little kid, and he needs people to say that, oh, you're so good, and then on the other hand, he doesn't give a shit about what people, because he constantly throws himself into these chaotic things like Twitter. Isaacson wrote that it's the perfect place for Elon. It's a playground, and now he can control the playground. It's the big revenge on his childhood. And there are so many examples of that. And yeah, I guess it's a person like that, like you said, Richard, that is needed to go to extremes. All these companies would have failed without an Elon. Because the things he did, the way he pushed,
started without an Elon.
no, not that either. And that's what makes him amazing. But it's taking a toll. And he gets asked this question about what people, if they want to be like him, and he says, "Well, I don't think that's. Be careful what you wish for. It's not easy to be me." I think that says a lot.
Those are all fascinating. We'll bring in Hans. Hans, how's it going, brother? We're just going around our biggest takeaway and then sort of jumping around. We're trying to figure out how to do a book review like regular people. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just excited to discuss all this with y'all. It was really an incredible book. I love Walter's storytelling method, just the way that he goes chronologically from beginning to end, and that's very purposeful. And he tells you, each little vignette kind of in a row, and lets you as the reader build up, basically people come into it and they have their perception of Elon. And so he's not, each reader can kind of choose their own interpretation as they go through from one story to the next. And so I liked that. And I really appreciated also just the amount of details that we got about, especially the recent stuff. Almost the whole second half of the book is essentially just I think the last 5 years, and so getting to see Twitter in depth is really cool. And SpaceX, we got some cool technical details. The one thing that I think I walked away from the most from the book was like both the necessity of and kind of addiction to, and that like yin and yang way of drama for Elon, that he uses the positive and the negative emotion. Like, we've got this grand mission of what we're trying to do for humanity. And so that's this like positive force, and that attracts people to it. But then he comes in and backfills behind that. Okay, we've got the positive view. We also have the existential dread. And you need both the place that you're going to and the thing behind you that's chasing you in order to get max. Like you can pursue a goal with just the positive vision in mind, but you're never going to pursue that as hard, as quickly, as forcefully, as creatively as you can without having that monster breathing down the back of your neck and propelling full force forward. And so Elon obviously understands that at a very deep level. And it seems like, I don't even know how consciously he understands that. I think he understands that at a deep, intuitive, subconscious level. And that's why he kind of stirs up the drama, just like Walter pointed out with things like Twitter. And I don't think he wants to examine it too much because he realizes that it's too effective in getting him where he wants to go. And so he doesn't really want to mess with the formula. So he doesn't want to, pull back the hood and tinker with that at all. So I think that was, my biggest takeaway from the whole book. And, on the one hand, I'm inspired by it. It's interesting to understand that at that level. And it's also scary because I don't really have the deep personal desire to live in a world that is surrounded by that much drama. And so, trying to kind of dissect all of that and then figure out, okay, what are the takeaways, and how to bring practical application into my own life.
By the way, I wanted to ask if Hans was solo today. And I forgot that was
Whoa!
Of course.
Star Wars.
Of course.
A little Star Wars. And I forgot
Richard,
to
you're
say
on fire today.
and Hans kind of alluded to it. There's a physical price. So I think really, and I think what Hans maybe wasn't alluding to it, but I thought he was, is if you examine the fact that you're living under that kind of stress, that shortens your life. There's no way around it. The chemicals that your body has to produce, that just shortens your life. So maybe instead of living to 100, you might live to 90. But maybe as opposed to living to 75, you live to 65.
It's probably why he lost his hair when he was so young and had to get those transplants.
Maybe. But I think, that is something that we don't give him credit for, that he's sacrificing a portion of his life for us, literally.
He must have a constant ulcer. I mean, he's throwing up because he has so much anxiety.
Thought occurred to me about the book, and we were talking about his family. Was anyone else expecting the Rive cousins to show up a little bit more than they did? Because it felt like, he described the falling out, problems with Solar City, but then there wasn't any more detail to it than that. And you really just got the impression of okay, so things at Solar City didn't work out, or he disliked that business model so much that now these cousins he grew up with are just incommunicado. There was a quote there where he's like, I fucking hate my cousins. I will never talk to them again. I was like, holy crap, man. That's I'm surprised there just wasn't more discussion about that. Is that really how he feels about those guys?
I think that's
Christmas.
But I think that's his interpersonal defect. I mean, I think that's a defect he has. He has a difficulty time relating to other people. And I think, he was clear. He has no empathy for anybody else. So I think he's pretty black and white, makes decision-making fairly easy. And if you're not somebody who's perhaps pushed by thinking about the moral impact or all that stuff, it makes decision-making easier. But it certainly impacts your ability to make relationships with people and have friends. The other thing I was going to say that struck me is and I didn't know this, his relationship with Amber Heard. If I would have known that before I saw the Johnny Depp trial, I would have flipped out. I mean, after you saw what Amber Heard's relationship was with Johnny Depp, does any human being that has a reasonable bone in their body, would they want to have a relationship? Would they want to be in that kind of relationship? Is that a healthy relationship? But for Elon, apparently he likes that chaos, and it drives him to be productive. It, again, kind of a one in a generational thing.
He's productive both in baby producing and companies. Weird relationships.
The thing with Elon is he's always looking for a challenge, and from the upbringing and whatnot, he's also looking for trouble and trying to pick a fight, looking for that next challenge, that next hurdle to overcome, that next thing that's getting in his way. And when things are going good, he has that urge to go out looking for trouble, go out, pick a fight, go out, look for that next challenge, and earlier in the book, But he found good, wholesome challenges to go attack. But later on, as he solved a bunch of stuff, some of his choices and what he chooses to go pick a fight about, like he hasn't matured like you'd expect him to from the fights he's been in and the challenges he's overcome, which is struck me a little bit.
Hans?
Yeah, I wanted to go back just for a second to the comment about the cousins, because we also kind of saw that in his relationship with Hans Königsmann. Like, when Hans is basically not driving as quickly, like he's lost that youthful zeal to get everything done, and he's kind of pushing back on Elon more and trying to pull in the restraints and, you know, be a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more methodical. And Elon's like, it's time for you to go. And like, that was really harsh, I feel like, for me as a reader, like someone who had contributed. You know, it's not like the cousins where they were just not apparently good at accomplishing the mission. Like, Hans had been really effective and had contributed a ton to the success of SpaceX. Just like, you're not as useful anymore as you could be. It's time to get some fresh blood in here. And there's like no, you know, emotional attachment to that decision whatsoever. Like, it's just a very calculated, matter of fact, kind of objective thing. And so it goes back to what you were saying, Richard, about the, you know, just very objective decision. Like, the decision is easy. Are you the most effective person in this position at this moment right now? I don't care. Like, there's no sunk cost. It doesn't matter what you've accomplished in the past. Can I put a better person in your position right now to continue pushing this mission forward from here on? And the answer was yes. And so clearly made the decision. Very simple. But just, yeah, like very brutal from an interpersonal standpoint. Like, I would not personally be able to make that decision as a CEO. It's one of the reasons that I'm a terrible manager and a terrible executive, and I don't do that anymore.
Go for it, Mimi.
It's all in the Polytopia lessons. I mean, he's teaching Kimball to become a good CEO by playing video games. And the most important one is Kimball, he has this sensitive side. So in a video game, you don't have to have feelings for the people you kill or whatever. And that's what you have to apply in companies. And I think that's very typical. I mean, I think Grimes tells him that this is Hans' last day. And Elon, he just says, well, yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. He's not sentimental about it. But I think it's also, we were talking before about his mission, and that sometimes we feel like he's just saying the same things over and over again, but how he is really, really committed. Like when they went to Mexico for New Year, and they had a good party and they had a nice dinner and everything. And then he just zooms out, and then he stands out looking up, and all he can think about is, I have to get Starship to orbit. I have to get Starship to orbit. It's always the next thing. I wish he could just sit down, take a deep breath, be content for 24 hours, just be happy about what he has accomplished, and then move on. But he's never, and he can't sit still. He has to move and create drama. And I'm exhausted just reading about it.
Let's do Richard and Tony.
I was going to say it's almost like a professional sports metaphor. I think that in professional sports, you know, if you were a superstar last year, but you stink this week, they cut you. And there is no, you know, they may like you and love you, but in terms of if you can't perform, then you're done. And I think that's how Elon operates. If you don't live up to his standard, even if you were his brother, he'd cut you and wouldn't feel bad about it. And he'd feel that if he didn't do that, he wouldn't have the success he had.
I think that's a really good metaphor, Richard, but even that is somewhat incomplete, because even in professional sports, there are some athletes who can achieve that level of popularity. Like I think of like the last years of Kobe Bryant. They could never cut Kobe as terrible as he was in those last two seasons. But, you know, like the people in these companies making them work in Tesla and SpaceX, they don't become all stars in that same way, and that there's like a sort of public feedback. But the thought that I had, since we're talking about like how Elon's connected with different people, congressmen as cousins, made me think about the little aside about JB. And not sure if I missed this in my reading of the book, but was JB's return to Tesla's board covered in the book? I feel like that happened and there wasn't really a comment on it. That was something that I was like, I remember just earmarking when I was listening to that chapter and seeing like, okay, what does Isaacson, or what insights does Isaacson have on JB's eventual return? And it seems like that kind of came and went without him really digging into it that much.
Yeah, I didn't really see anything in the book, but what I gather is that I think Elon and JB probably have had a good relationship throughout. It's just not really. It almost feels like it was part of the plan for him to step away, start the recycling company, and then come back to the board and maybe, who knows, become CEO of Tesla once Elon's ready to move on. I don't know. Like, I'm just speculating here, but it's not fully covered in the book. Go ahead, Richard. I saw you wanted to say
I was going to say that was using Kobe Bryant. That was a wonderful choice because he was off the charts too. And the kind of the thing I was thinking about is their work ethic is unparalleled. So if Elon, if he has to work 24 hours a day, he'd work 24 hours a day. And I'm sure he did plenty of times, 24 hours a day. I can't even stay up 24 hours, by the way. So let alone work 24 hours a day. But I remember hearing stories about Kobe Bryant, and a rookie would come into the Lakers, because I'm living in LA, so I'm a Laker fan, as it turns out. And there would be a rookie, and they'd like to attach to some superstar and find out how he's doing it. So he'd have a conversation with the rookie, and the rookie and him would make arrangements to go and practice before practice. And literally what Kobe would do is he'd send the car out for the guy at like 3:00 in the morning. They'd go to the gym. They'd practice till like 6. The other guy would go home. Kobe would stay, and then he'd wait till regular practice started at 10 and then join in. He had that kind of work ethic, unending. But that is like, again, those kind of people just don't exist. That is really unusual, odd behavior. That's why there are so few real superstars in the world. When I say superstar, Elon's a superstar. There are just very few people like that because it's not normal. Really, it's not.
Yeah, it's some sort of like combination of natural born talent with a unending obsession with what you're doing. And I think when those two things marry up, you have a Kobe Bryant. You have a LeBron James. Don't sue me. You have a see what I did there. You have a Elon Musk. You have those kinds of types of people. What I also find really interesting is, when I think about his sort of behavior, or how he is sort of running like X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it nowadays, and sort of how he thinks about the algorithm, which is that method that he's brought up that has those 5 very important steps, and part of the framework is, if you have to look to delete processes, you have to look to delete things, and if you're not pushing far enough to like know where you've gone too far, then you're not pushing far enough. I think a lot of the Twitter X drama that constantly comes up, I think it's his methodology. Like, he is applying that methodology to everything, not just engineering, but to everything. And we're seeing it sort of play out. And then we see the reverberations from that decision-making coming up in societal issues like, changing policies, or, deciding to do something with the platform, which is giving ammunition for absolutely everybody to come after him. But he continues to do that regardless, And I just find that very fascinating that we're seeing we're seeing the manifestation of the process in real life. And instead of and this is, I don't know if this is good or bad, but instead of me seeing what he posts or what he says or what he does as, wow, he's like looking to create controversy or something, I'm like, no, that's the algorithm. he's just applying it to that specific thing. Did you guys have a similar takeaway there? Am I even making any sense? I'd love to sort of, yeah.
I was going to ask you a question. When you were at Tesla, did you have like practical examples of seeing that while you were there?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, the biggest one that I can think through is, we would do a sort of we were implementing a Q&A process in the outbound process of the facility that I worked at, and there were quality checks at every step to ensure that we were doing the right thing. But the ultimate guidance that my leader and I and the team came up with was, just as long as it arrives good, we know that it worked. So just put in processes at the beginning that just ensure that it comes out good, so you don't have to check every step. And it's common sense. You just yank stuff out. The other one is we would have dunnage for packaging, where dunnage is basically stuff you have to put into the boxes to make sure, like, say, you put a plastic part next to a metal part and they're not properly packaged from the supplier. You can't have them together because, once the freight moves, boom, you have a damaged plastic part, right? So we were buying basically $1 million worth of, and I can say this now because my NDA is up, y'all. Wow, what else can I say? We would buy $1.5 million of dunnage, just literally paper, just crap, to basically garbage to fill up boxes with. We would spend about $1 million a year. And then we're like, why are we buying that when we can just take the cardboard that comes into the facility, pass it through a shredder, and just use that as the dunnage? And we saved $1 million. We just bought a $10,000 piece of equipment, and then all of a sudden we saved $1 million in packaging. So it's like stuff like that constantly would happen. That's two specific examples that I can think of right now.
Since you're not governed by the NDA anymore, what's the craziest thing that happened to you at Tesla while you were there?
Hans, what would you like to say? Who's got something to say?
Yeah, my question is, now that you're not governed by the NDA, what's the craziest thing that happened to you while you were at Tesla?
Alex, what do you have to say, brother? What's going on? Listen, I can still get sued. Right, Richard? You're a lawyer. Tell me.
You can get sued for anything, but Elon at least will follow your channel very closely then.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
it might be worth it. But I think that what you said earlier, I think that he's not consciously getting into all these controversies. He just never stops to think. I mean, he says at some time, they say, what is your regret for the year? That he stabbed his thigh, he cut his throat, he does things too fast. But sometimes he's so, like when he's taking over Twitter and he decides to pay off the money the day before so he can fire the people so they can't resign, so he can get some vengeance because he thinks that they lied to him.
I love that.
You love that? Yeah, I thought it was rather childish, but I can imagine it felt good. But I feel sorry for this guy. What's his name? Yoel Roth, who tried to stay on, and he was really worried about the consequences. And in the end, Elon hangs him out on Twitter, and he has to move. And he says that Elon doesn't understand that not everybody has security like he does. So sometimes I wish that. I mean, he does things that are so stupid, like the Pelosi husband thing, that he's talking about mainstream media and media is lying and everything, and then he picks things from a garbage paper and tweets it out that anyone could see that it was just fake news. And if he just had that hold on 15 seconds and think about it button, it would be good.
I think what's interesting about all that is that I think Elon is very much a regular human being that has a lot of flaws like everybody else, but he's not adjusting for his leverage and scale, right? Because every other CEO or whatever that you would think of is sort of like, well, that's why I have an HR department and publicists and everything, because in their head it's like, well, as I grow, as my leverage grows and my scale grows, my mistakes or decisions that I make that are incorrect could have an impact that perhaps when I was smaller in the societal hierarchy chain, they're not going to impact people downstream because it's not large enough. But when you have $200 billion net worth, you own a social media company, and you could go outside and do a random thing and it becomes global news, then the one thing could lead to another really quickly. And I wonder how much of that is it premeditated, where he's not dumb, clearly, but does he think about the second and third order effects from his actions, and is he trying to normalize making mistakes at any scale, or does he simply not think that the second and third order effects really matter to what he's trying to achieve? Right? It's an interesting question. That's probably where we talk about sort of lack of empathy with other people, so on and so forth. Yeah,
I think that's just a defect. That's just a defect that's missing. I don't think he's intending. I don't think he's contemplating. I think he's reacting. I think he's reacting, and that's how it comes out. And again, he probably is reinforced by his own success, right? If you do things a particular way and you accomplish something, why would you change the method? Why would you care about changing the method? If your method is to basically challenge everything and work for the best result, and that's it, and it's gotten to the point you're the richest person in the world, you have the best technology, and he believes all this, I believe. So why would you change? And why would you care? And I don't think he cares. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just don't think he's capable of caring.
I don't think he can change either.
Or maybe.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, hon.
I also think it, ties into, he uses those thinking centers of his brain that are dedicated to, considering second, third, fourth order effects. That's his job. That's what he does all day. And then Polytopia and X are his two outlets. So I think that's just like Walter talked about, he has different modes that he goes into and kind of different personalities in the different modes. That Polytopia / X Elon is this is venting distraction time. And it's not he's clearing his mind. He's not, I know in Polytopia there is some kind of overlap between he's practicing some skills, and in the same will be true on X, that a lot of it is, cultivating an image and managing brand awareness. And so that it's not it's completely disconnected, but I think that the filters are definitely dialed back the way that he interacts with those systems. It is in a completely different mode than really just carefully strategically planning, hey, I'm going to say this, and then this person's going to react this way, and this person's going to react that way, and it's going to have all this. So there's that, and then all tied into the fact that yes, with whatever form of on the spectrum that he is, he's not super sensitive to the impact of his words on people. And yeah, I like that specific story of Yoel, because that one was really harsh. That I think Yoel didn't deserve that in any way, shape, or form, and that was definitely a mistake on Elon's part. And I have a hard time struggling to know how to feel about those situations, because on the one hand, I appreciate that Elon does share with us on X, so much more openly than any other person at that level is or would. And so it's kind of you just kind of have to take the good with the bad on that front. And it does create a little bit of carnage. Normally I hold people of that size, I'll blast people that, have a platform and they punch down to someone who really has no ability to defend themselves, and they'll kind of unleash that Twitter mob on somebody. That's one of the things that really bothers me. And so I'll typically, not even hesitate to blast a person who's doing that with both barrels. And I don't like to see that when Elon does that. But then at the same time, I don't want Elon not to engage at all in social media. And I don't want a PR department or, a lawyer or someone else to be the filter between Elon and Twitter. And so I think, when I see it, I typically try and say, I just basically treat him the same way I would anyone else. Be like, Elon, that's not cool. Not that he's ever going to see it, but I don't like that part, but I also don't want him not to continue to share what he's thinking on Twitter.
Go ahead, Tony.
I kind of want you to answer Pete's question now.
Mike. You suck.
Sorry, man.
All right. Maybe for the Q&A, we'll see.
But the comment I had was just the thought that like the spat with the Thai cave diver, that's probably like the best example of like what you're talking about, Farzad. Like things that normal people would do without even thinking about it, but it's just so no one who has that level of reach and following would ever get into that except Elon, you know?
Yeah, for sure. The one thing that was interesting too is, you know, one of the things that I would often hear when Elon would have these foot and mouth moments, or these moments where it creates a lot of controversy and it's, let's call them ill-advised. Some of the concerns, you know, from say the Tesla investing crowd specifically, where that he's surrounding himself with people that aren't really telling him what's going on. They're not being honest with him as far as like how this could be harmful. But from the book, I think, and I would love to hear your opinion on this. It does seem like he does have people around him that will tell him when he's being incorrect, or he's making mistakes, or he's saying things that could be harmful. Do you guys get the same sense when you guys read the book?
Like Kimball and Kimball's wife?
Yeah. And his, you know, Grimes in a way, his mom in a way. I expect like his family seems pretty damn supportive and honest. And I think that's pretty awesome that he has a family that's like, not a lot of people have that. And I think that was a unique dynamic that I was not expecting to see shine through the book, that Kimball is a freaking rock star in a way, if you really think about it, because he tells him how it is. And they had a falling out because, at least for a short period, it seems, because of his actions. So, yeah, go ahead, Hans. I see you're off.
Yeah, I mean, he does have those people who will say that, but a lot of times, you know, it gets him put in the hot box for a season that he doesn't like to be pushed back on in that way. And so, you know, I think that that's a really valid criticism that Kara Swisher has of him, that he needs to kind of voluntarily give people more power to push back on him that obviously have his best interest in heart. And yeah, so that's the thing that I think it would be better to see.
I think it's interesting. Can I go ahead? I think it's interesting because Elon always says that you should oppose him and you could come with other suggestions and do. But I think in real life, often it's not that popular. But I thought it was so funny, that Twitter story when he went into demon mode and his old workers said that, well, we just don't listen to him. We don't do it. We don't do what he says. And then we just wait for him to calm down. And I think that you have to be pretty sure of yourself to have the audacity to do such a thing when you have Elon as a boss. But I think that it's good that some people do it, because otherwise we would have seen even worse things happening.
I think one of the perfect examples of that, and I'll throw it back to you, Tony. Sorry, the fact that they built a compact car when he said don't build a compact car.
Yes.
Thank God.
I love that.
Any day now, I'm sure like the actual design for the regular truck, like the alternate Cybertruck will come out, and they made that too.
That's a great point.
But yeah, I mean, I think building on what Mimi said, like as much as like he probably allows himself to get corrected more than other people in that similar position. Like he's probably getting corrected more than like Mari Barra is or Jim Farley or whatever. But there are certain things where he just needs to touch the stove himself. And I think that's what we saw a lot in Twitter, like moving the servers, all that sort of stuff. He just needs to put his hand on the stove.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that story.
Those were Lars and Franz, I think, and Gwynne kind of all stand out as well in that realm of people like Kimball who can push back and kind of manage Elon and his emotions and help him to see reason kind of over the long term really well.
And I was going to say, I think he has to combat his own reflex to not take the advice. I think his initial reflex is always going to be to dismiss it. And what I was saying, thinking about what Mimi was saying, but for those people, would he still be around?
That's a good point. So let's ask that question. If it wasn't for those people, do you think that he would still be around? Silence.
Yeah,
Anybody wanna answer that?
that's a really good question. It's hard to say. We don't know. We don't know a lot of things that they probably have stopped. So maybe not.
Well,
It's definitely he definitely needs people who balance him in some way and who have the guts to do that. Sorry.
Good.
Well, Shotwell convincing him to not scrap Falcon Heavy, that stands out a lot. And then just thinking of all the stuff that Shotwell does that I imagine Elon would be really terrible at. Like, I think SpaceX would definitely not be here if it wasn't for Shotwell.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the bigger picture, you know, how much money and time would he have wasted just going down other paths? And as difficult as it has been to get to the current status with everything, you know, that has happened, if he would have just not have the direction or provided some direction, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here.
No, that's true.
Literally, like this circle wouldn't be here right now. Go ahead, Hans, and then Alec.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially Gwynne, SpaceX would not be SpaceX without her. Like, Elon is not going to play well with the defense industry. And, you know, I've got lots of anecdotes of, I'm not going to disclose how, but a lot of higher ups in the Air Force who really, really, really don't like, and I'm from Colorado Springs, and so there's, you know, Peterson Air Force Base, NORAD is all there. There's a lot of high-level Air Force decision-making that happens there, and he's not a popular guy in those circles. And they pretty much, you know, if they could have gotten rid of him at numerous points, they would have, but the fact of the matter is it's a combination of they need him, but also Gwynne really is that go-between and really helps smooth over the differences between him and the rest of the industry.
After Farzad discloses his confidential data, we'd like to have a double header, and Hans can then disclose his confidential Air Force data. Thank you, Hans.
As long as you volunteer your time as our lawyer if we get in trouble. Is that fair?
Why don't they like him, Hans? Is it because of his political tweeting, or is it
the defense industry has a very specific playbook of how you do things and how you get things done. And then especially, you know, just think about NASA and the way that these contracts get made. You know, everybody gets a piece, and that's how bills get passed. Is there's a lot of pork barrel spending and a lot of quid pro quo, and Elon doesn't have any time for any of that. And so that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex, and then Tony.
What I was going to say about that was Elon's method of establishing boundaries with other people and challenging boundaries. And there's a limited number of people that can establish healthy boundaries with Elon, and that he respects enough to respect their boundaries, because he pushes everybody's boundaries and is always trolling people and finding out where those boundaries are and stepping all over them.
Tony?
This might be random, but what Hans was saying about the military has me thinking about like Elon being an Iron Man and everyone calling him like the real life Tony Stark, and just how, if he really was, how much worse the world would be. And think about all the stuff Tony Stark did before like the face turn as Iron Man. Like, if all of Elon Musk's industries really were focused on just making weapons, the world would be such a worse place.
That's a great point. Well, before I ask this question, is there anything else the panel wants to say on what we've discussed so far before we maybe go down a different pathway?
I was going to ask a question. Do you guys think that, what do you think, or what do you think about his concern about him, in essence, stopping a nuclear war in Ukraine?
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. How do you kind of perceive that?
He gave a totally different story afterwards. He said that it was never on there, and they called him, asked him to turn it on. But in the book, it seems like he turned it off. So, well, I don't know. I think that whole thing is complicated. I mean, it was never the thought about Starlink to provide information for military, but I think it was, I don't know. I think it was a big decision to make if he decided to turn it off right before the attack.
I think that, like, seeing Elon's outlook of how he's kind of like playing Civilization 6 in real life, like it's understandable how someone might think, like, you know, maybe it's appropriate to let the Russians keep Crimea, you know, just from the broad spectrum of history. Like that's the main thing that stands out for me, is that tweet where he said that, like, he acknowledged it as Khrushchev's mistake. It was Khrushchev's mistake, right? Who put Crimea in with Ukraine. But yeah, that's a really complicated can of worms, and yeah, especially the stakes are so high, right?
Yeah, but he's so funny, because then they offer, and then he was really pissed off because the government wouldn't pay him anything, and then they decided to pay him, and then he was so pissed off he said, "No, don't bother, I'll do it anyway." So,
Well,
so he kind of, yeah, he's funny.
I think so. Walter did retract the part in the book, and he said that he made a mistake when he said that he turned it off. So it was never on. Yeah. So so he retracted that, I think, before the book was released on Twitter. I think he made assumptions he shouldn't have, is what he said.
I think it was about a matter of whether he was going to extend it to cover that area and not turn it on or off.
They wanted him to turn it on.
So there was still an election. There was still an election.
So it's wrong in the book.
It's wrong in the book, yeah. And Ukraine assumed that it was on, and then once they were going there and they realized it wasn't on, they called Elon and they're like, "Turn it on," and he's like, "What the fuck? No, that's crazy. I'm not gonna." So I think it highlights a few things. Number one, how come a civilian rated internet service is better than a military rated internet service? Number one. So why in the hell is Starlink the one that works and all the other ones don't work? That says, I want Starlink now. Okay.
Well, that's the delivery. Isn't that partly the delivery system?
Have you guys ever used that?
They're able to shoot the satellites up at such a rate much faster than the government was able to do.
Yeah.
I think it's because the military alternative is something similar to HughesNet. It's the really large satellite that's much further away, so it's got too much latency. So you wouldn't be able to use it to pilot an FPV drone to, you know, drop a grenade into a tank.
Yeah. So from that standpoint, I mean, that really highlights the technical superiority and sort of the method that he has. Sort of the companies that he has are just really good at what they do. I think that's one thing that it highlights. And then second, I believe he said that on Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, that if the United States asked him to turn it on, he would. But because it was, because that wasn't asked, then he felt that it was his decision to say, I am not going to turn it on. And I think an act, I really do view it from this perspective, that an act that very much was lauded by the world when it was at first done, like, here's Starlink for Ukraine. And then Ukraine's like, dude, without Starlink, we would have been screwed. All of a sudden turned into, wow, what a piece of shit. He didn't turn on Starlink. I'm like, okay, well, but it's not really that sort of direct, is it? So from my standpoint, I just think it was a good deed that highlighted just how more advanced his products are than everybody else. That sort of turned into something that was unfortunate. That I kind of understand why Ukrainians would be upset about this. I mean, it's obvious to know why. From their perspective, this is like an invasion of their land, and this is insane. I don't have a horse, honestly. Like, I support the people. I just want the people to not die from this thing, right? So, but it's complex. It's super complex. Go ahead, Mimi. And then Hans.
I think that the Ukrainians also were a little upset by his, like Tony talked about, his peace plan. Maybe he should stay out of those. But I think that Blinken also offered support to Elon's version on the news, and I think that was really good. Because, I mean, people reacted to the book before they had the true story. So
think about what a slippery place this must put people like that in, like Blinken or like I guess, the Biden administration generally, because he's so essential to these issues in foreign affairs, like in the Ukraine war. But he's a foe in many ways, or at least they've made a foe out of him in many ways on their domestic policy issues, which is like, I don't know, not to digress on political stuff, but it's such a great like example of Democrats like sabotaging themselves, sort of destroying themselves, because there's all the reason in the world why someone like Joe Biden and then maybe Obama before him could try to collect political credit for the success of Tesla. Like they were in charge of the department when they got all these loans, when they got these when they're in their formative years, those DOE loans. So how they chose to make a foe out of him instead is just baffling to me.
But Obama didn't. Biden is, but
no, I think that was his point, is that Obama sort of would have embraced this. Yeah. Go ahead, Hans.
Well, Biden was vice president when the DOE gave those loans to Tesla. So, like, again, it's something he could take credit for, and
Yep.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
All that actually ties in really well to the point that I was going to make. There's really, you asked the question, how is it that a private company has the best internet hardware, and it's not hackable by the Russians in the way that our supposedly defense rated stuff is. And I think the answer is that Elon is, there's really two types of both army commander, military commanders and politicians. There's wartime and peacetime people. And Ben Horowitz actually talks about this quite a bit in the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, which is an incredible book, highly recommend. And Elon is a wartime general. He's a general of multiple private companies, but he is a wartime general nonetheless. And the military industrial complex in the United States has been a peacetime group of people for a long time, that we haven't been severely stressed. The people who are at the highest positions of government and military power and influence today would never have survived in those positions in World War II. They would have been flushed out. They just can't hack it. But we haven't had those type of stress tests on our military apparatus. And so when you don't have those, then the politics starts winning, and there's all kinds of funkiness that happens. And, that's why the NASA that created the Apollo missions couldn't recognize, the NASA of the 1980s. Like, they're two completely different organizations that are run in two completely diametrically opposed ways. You can't put a person on the moon in 10 years with the amount of red tape. Like, we can't even do the things that we did in the 1960s now in 2023. And so that's why these peacetime, politically motivated officials, they hate competent wartime personalities. And they those people do not survive in the inside of the apparatus as it stands today. They get pushed out. If you read the was it Liftoff? What's Ashley Vance's new book? No, When the Heavens Went on Sale, and they talk about the official who was over NASA Ames. Like, he was one of those people. And they pushed him out. Like, he was not allowed to continue doing what he was doing there. So that's another example of that. And right now, the Biden administration is really trying to bring Elon to heel in some way, shape, or form, because he's a thorn in their side. And so on the one hand, they need him. On the other hand, they need to bring him to heel because they can't control him. And so it's creating this tension that these people who really, have no business actually being in charge of things when the shit hits the fan, are trying to lord it over the break glass in case of emergency type people.
Garbage.
Shopping centers, you've seen one, you've seen them all. By the way,
dude, so good.
Thank you.
Wow.
What I was going to say is what we take for granted is the reason why Ukraine has survived is because Palantir, which provided basically the defense strategy to the Ukraine, because obviously they were really outmanned, really out weaponized. And Palantir is a software company that provides that all kinds of ware. But last week I saw Karp's the head of the CEO of Palantir, and he didn't say it exactly, but he said what happened is Palantir used Starlink. They used the Starlink to generate the information to provide to the Defense Department, whatever, to basically save Ukraine's ass. And that should be recognized. Because if that was recognized to the extent that there's pushback on Elon, that would kind of suppress that. Because again, he's entitled. He's entitled to lots of criticism for stuff he does wrong, but he's also entitled to credit when he does good stuff.
That's a phenomenal point. I feel like the good stuff is rarely mentioned, but the bad stuff is mentioned often, and it's because of politics, and it's because of sort of a lot of the dynamics that everybody else has outlined here. Go ahead.
To reverse that question or that order of things, if the Ukraine war didn't happen and we didn't have this whole showcase of Starlink's like exceptional utility, how much less prominent would Starlink be now?
That's a great point. That's a great point. It sort of showcased how. Yeah, it showcased the excellence of the system. Go ahead, Mimi. I saw your hand go up before, and then
Yeah, no, I lost the thread. I'll come
all
back.
right, Richard.
So it's and this is a case where it's good advertising, right?
I hate to say it that way, but it's true. Yeah,
It's expensive advertising.
yeah, it's wild. I mean, it really is wild. And I could say so many things on this, but I feel like I'm going to derail the conversation. It just really highlights just how hard it is to get the truth of like the whole picture. Like you can't get the whole picture from one source. It's impossible. There isn't a singular source that gives you a whole picture, at least that I know of. Go ahead, Mimi. It seems like you're.
I was going to say that in this Tesla circle, I'm often critical about Elon, but outside of it, I spend 99% of the time defending him.
Supposed to be the opposite, Mimi.
What?
I'm kidding. You have to feed the echo chamber, Mimi. Come on now.
No, I don't. The echo chamber needs some shaking up.
Yes.
So I think that. I mean, I'm so pissed. It's my family. It's my friends. It's media. It's the commentator section in all the. It's really exhausting, and I can't help myself. I just have to go out there and defend him because I feel that there are so many things that people don't give him credit for, but there's so many stupid things they give him shit for.
Yeah, it's almost like the things that they give him shit for is like you can't really give him shit for a lot of those things because they're not really like telling the full story. And there's other things you could totally give him shit for that they never give him shit for.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, it's the weirdest thing.
It's
so
things
weird.
that don't matter. They're like so tiny and insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
It's clickbait, but they know it sells, right? That's how. This is what YouTube has taught me is that it becomes quite obvious how media manipulates and tries to drive headlines by creating it's misinformation, disinformation. Really, it's just propaganda. It's propaganda everywhere.
It's a manufactured algorithm. They know that's their algorithm that's going to draw viewers and make them money.
100% right.
And yet, as like. It's interesting that for as bad as all that is, like we talk about the algorithm maximizing engagement with negative content and bad things spreading, it's strange that the most watched YouTuber doesn't make bad like negative content or clickbait. It's all like really positive, wholesome stuff. But I guess that's what makes like Mr. Beast all that more like remarkable, right?
I mean, you can only freaking make a train go into a hole once before it's like just these brilliant ideas. We're talking about Mr. Beast, y'all, for those that don't know what Tony's talking about. It's just fascinating discussion. We're a little bit over an hour in. Thank you all so much for sticking with us so far. Give us a like, give us a subscribe if you're enjoying so far. Where else do we want to take this conversation? I mean, I feel like there's so much to talk about. Go ahead, Alex. I see you coming off mute.
The one interesting thing that I saw throughout the book was a story around Jenna, and how that affected Elon, because everybody around Elon values Elon and wants to be valued by Elon. Like there's that need for attention, and I don't know if he is capable of emotions and love and whatnot, but value is something he understands, and those around him. So Jenna didn't do an interview with Walter, and her perspective isn't in the book. So you have to sort of put yourself in her shoes of what's going on there. But on Elon's side,
real quick, Alex, you want to? So for those that maybe are not familiar, can you give context into who Jenna is?
Jenna is Elon's formerly named Xavier. It's his trans daughter, and she transitioned early in 2021, I believe it was. It was 2020 or 2021 when she transitioned and filed a lawsuit to shut her biological father completely out. She still has connections to a few of Elon's family, but it did seem that Elon's attitude towards the woke mind virus specifically, and some of the other issues, she's when I was reading the book, she seemed like an anti-hero and Elon's kryptonite that sent him down some pretty dark paths, because like I'm trying to figure and then it left me spinning my wheels, because there is a perspective there that wasn't expressed in the book. So what is the perspective? But even that, it did feel like she was a bit of a kryptonite to Elon, and he's like hurt and quite bothered by not being valued and sought to be valued by that other person that he cares so deeply about.
Yeah, I think the sort of my takeaway from the book is that I believe that he believes that his daughter Jenna now wouldn't have gone through the transition if she wasn't sort of exposed to what he calls the woke mind virus in the school or whatever that she went to. And it's almost like like you said, it's personal. I think it's very much personal. And you can, like, now that you kind of see the kind of post he makes on X and Twitter, you can kind of see like, okay, I can see where this is rooted now. Like, I completely understand that, because we sort of knew about it loosely when the everything was sort of filed a year or two ago, but now I think you get a lot more context into that story.
Well, it challenged his boundaries quite a bit, and put a lot of challenges and really burned down a lot of his boundaries and whatnot. And it did change his attitude toward a whole bunch of different.
Yeah. I think it's a lived experience sort of thing. Like it impacted him personally, and that's why he's sort of going after it. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a direct rejection by your kid. You know, your kid is rejecting your ethos. That's first. And then they actually reject you. I mean, outright reject you. So how could you not respond, with an excessive response? You would, and I would think it would have to influence how he how he saw things thereafter, because it would be tied into the emotions of having that same rejection.
And he did the same to his father as well.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great point. Go ahead, man.
History repeats itself. But I never thought that he blamed the woke mind virus on the transitioning. I think that it was on her whole communist, we hate capitalists, richest man in the world thing.
I misphrased that completely. Yeah, you got it.
I think so, but I think that he doesn't understand this transitioning thing. I think that it's not in his mind frame to grasp this. And he tweeted some pretty stupid things about pronouns and everything, and I would have loved to hear her side of the story, because I mean, he's giving a rather simplified picture of it, but none of the kids were interviewed. I think I really missed that in the book. They are present, and Walter Isaacson talked about how they react and everything. But I think that the thing, when they went to Rome, and Elon publishes photos of them, and they are really upset because they want him to ask their permission before, and then he gets so pissed off, so he just breaks up the trip. I mean, like the responsible father of some children. So, I mean, it would have been so interesting to hear their view on how it is to have Elon as a father.
I have a feeling they'll, maybe when they're fully grown, maybe in their 20s, we'll probably start to sort of get their story. You know, they'll.
But the oldest are.
How old is the oldest?
Two. One is a couple of years into some Ivy League school.
They might. I mean, yeah, they're adults.
Well,
but
yeah, it's still early. But I wonder if that was Elon's. If he said that's the limit. You can't talk to my kids.
Maybe potentially, or maybe he talked to the kids and there wasn't, because Walter did mention on an interview where he there were stories that he could have shared that he felt he couldn't share because they were just too painful. And I don't know if those are related to maybe his children or not, or maybe it's related to his childhood and his father and all that stuff. But there could have been stuff there that maybe it wasn't for the book. Like it just didn't make sense to include. So who knows? But that's a fascinating thing, Alex. There, I think that's it's just it's such a multifaceted. It's such a complex story, and I think that's really the takeaway here. Is like it's clearly, it's fascinating that we live during a time where this person exists right now, and then this person seems to have captivated the imagination of a lot of people, and has also captivated the hate of a lot of people. And now we have a book of him while he's living, of all his dirty laundry, and then we all get to read it and talk about it. The fuck is that? It's so weird, but it's I think at the same time is extremely valuable, and I think having an honest discussion around it and sort of see what kind of takeaways we can get from his story that he's willing to share with us. And we have Walter, who's done an excellent job putting it together for us to absorb. I just think there's a lot there for sort of the next generation of your next Elon Musks, or your next whatever, your people out there that are trying to change the world. Sure, there's stuff in there that's going to motivate them and inspire them. And a lot of things, and they're going to be like, okay, not going to do that, not going to do that, not going to do that, right? I mean, that's one would hope, Nobody's perfect, but I think we can all strive to do better over time. Go ahead, Tony.
Who do you think the next Elon Musk is?
Oh, Alex, since you came off mute.
Give me a minute on that one.
All right.
I think it's Hans.
I think we've already mentioned. I mentioned him. I invoked him. I think I already mentioned him. I think Jimmy Donaldson, Mr. Beast, could be the next great entrepreneur in that vein. Obviously, it's hard to make that connection because the things he's working on are so completely different. But I think he's younger now than Elon was when he sold Zip2, which is insane.
My answer is the person doesn't exist. They're not in the public light at this point in time.
Yeah.
And that's how they will be able to get to where they will get.
I think that Mr. Beast one is a good one, because he's kind of already in a, he's not just a content creator. He's also doing a lot of stuff with food and a lot of stuff with other offshoots as well. And like you said, his leverage is giant. And you can see sort of the Elon influence he's had on Jimmy. I'm pretty sure they talk, and I'm sure there's a little bit of something going on there, because as long as Jimmy is able to continue. But it's like, yeah. But maybe Richard's right. It's like, but there's just so many people out there. There's like 8 billion people in the world. Who knows? It might be some random person in Singapore, dude.
I was going to say that's the YouTube bubble, right? So that's 10 million, whatever subscribers he has. 10 million in the world.
No, it's way more.
He has 600 million subscribers.
Okay, let's say he had 600.
Get it
that's
right,
a tenth
Richard.
of the world. All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Get it
That's
right.
more than I have.
But
A few more.
thinking about the two of them is interesting too, because I think it's clear that whatever Elon has and whatever we were talking about that Kobe Bryant had, right? Like Mr. Beast has it, but it seems like he's on the opposite end of that like Asperger's spectrum as far as it comes to like emotionally engaging with people. Because we talk about how much like Elon is so guided to like making the biggest impact for the most number of people. He's thinking about things in like a civilizational lens. And then on the opposite end of it, like what Mr. Beast did that projected him into fame was doing something amazing for just that one person getting on a camera, like giving that homeless dude $10,000. Like it's interesting.
The level of value that Elon leverages, he leverages himself to just create crazy value with all these different companies. Like Mr. Beast is leveraging for his like personal brand, but he's not leveraging that brand to create enormous value. It's squeaking out a little bit of value here and there. I
don't know about that. I think the value is different. Yeah, I think it's quantified differently. I think Mr. Beast's value is maybe like it's like more purely societal than like product. It's more like a service, I would say, more than anything. It's hard to quantify though. But I think it has an impact. Maybe not as much, but it has.
Yeah, I'd be more impressed with somebody who created a cure for cancer. To me, publicity and stuff like that's great. To me, is that significant? That might be a talent, but in terms of the significance to the world society, I wonder, really in the grand scheme of things.
But how he's leveraged, I think the takeaway here is how he has leveraged that to make it to where he is now. It is sort of unorthodox in how he's approached it. And those in the same way that you can take the algorithm from Elon and apply it to Twitter, SpaceX, Tesla, Zip2, and all these stuff, and they're kind of all in different sort of places, but it's a formula. I think Jimmy's sort of creating his own. And then it could, right now it's entertainment, but it could go in an age where AI and robotics is doing all the manual labor and all the mental labor. Then I don't know, maybe what he's building will be conducive for the next generation of whatever that means for humans. Go ahead, Hans.
Yeah, I actually think it's more important than anyone who creates a cure for cancer, and I don't say that ironically. Jimmy is one of the biggest cultural forces, if not the biggest cultural forces, not only in Western society, but in the world, because of the way that he has all of his content translated. And his audience is young people. Like Jimmy is influencing what this young generation of children look at as being cool and what they want to do with their life. And the example that he's setting is he wants it to be cool to actually be a good human being. And so where Elon is trying to serve the light of human consciousness, and everything that he does can kind of connect back to, how do we make sure that the light of human consciousness stays around? When I look at somebody like Mr. Beast, he's serving the light in human consciousness and making it something that's desirable for people to try and be the best versions of themselves, to try and be generous, to try and be personable, to try and care about the person that's in front of you. And I think all of those things are woefully undervalued and recognized. There's not any, who else can we throw out there and name as being someone that is a role model for society, that's a popular person in culture who really goes to that level of espousing those values. Like, Keanu Reeves is famous for being like a good person. There's a couple, but it's very limited. We're much more likely to be interested in other, like a Kanye West or somebody who's controversial. Like those are the types of people that tend to be popular. And so to have someone who's like a countervailing force against that, I think is incredibly important.
It's a great point, Mimi.
Yeah. I think that Elon and his cult status is unique in so many ways, because I think that a person with all the traits that Elon has, the people unite behind him and they do everything for him because of the mission. I mean, because people believe so strongly in what Tesla is doing, what SpaceX is doing, and they want to help to save the planet or to bring people to Mars. I mean, they're so dedicated, they're putting up with so much bullshit and so many, I mean, to get people to work, like a vacation is for lazy people. You have meetings that go on until 2-3 a.m. in the mornings. And I think it's unique. I mean, this whole movement, us here talking about him, that whole thing, I've never seen it around one single person before. And I think it will be a long time before we see it happening with another person.
I agree. Let me ask 2 questions to the panel and then we'll start Q&A. How does that sound? Yeah? All right. Let's ping Q&A in the chat. Producer wife is back as well. She's in the background as always, but always doing a phenomenal job. All right. So here's a question. We'll start with Richard and we'll go around sort of like, what is that? Counterclockwise? Right. Counterclockwise. Yeah. Do you think this book will change the perception, the broader perception of people out there? And do you think it's going to have any material impact to his businesses?
No.
Okay. Maybe?
I don't think it will have any impact on his businesses. I think that it will change people's perception of Elon in a good way.
Hans? Hans is not ready. Alex?
I think it does change the perception of him. The background and that he actually thinks about it and does the research and comes from a place of knowledge. And although he is impulsive at times, or seems impulsive, it is careful. And I think there's a little bit more respect for the decisions he makes. And I don't think, and if you read the book, you sort of understand that it is very, very calculated, very, very thoughtful when he does make decisions. There's a lot in the book that does give you a window into his decision-making things. I don't know if it'll make a difference in the companies. Twitter is a dumpster fire still.
Tony?
I think the impact the book will have on a perception of Elon is something that might snowball over time. Like as Tesla gets more and more successful, more people who are maybe skeptical of him will take a look at the book and dig into it more, because I think most people reading the book will probably come off with a more positive viewpoint of him. It's just a question of like how many people would read it who need to read it. Like us here in this crowd, I think I said this in one of my first comments, like it was a compilation of like almost like a greatest hits of like, yeah, I remember that story. Like we're not really the people who needed to read this book. Outside of like a handful of stuff like really about his family life and that sort of insights, most of this are things that we know of, lived through, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it'll have a positive impact going forward, especially as we get to that $25,000 car and there's so many more people driving Teslas, right, and curious about the person behind the product. As to whether it'll positively affect the companies, I don't think so.
Hans?
Yeah, I think that I just want to segment it out between short term and long term. In the short term, I don't think it has any impact on Elon's general perception. I think that, most of the people who are reading the book right now, they're reading the book because they already know who Elon is. They already have an opinion about the type of person that he is, and they'll read the book and there'll be something for them to confirm their suspicions about his character. And so they'll walk away from the book feeling essentially the exact same that they came into the book, because very few people are reading it trying to actually understand who is Elon and ask the question, who is Elon, and then kind of be presented with evidence to form, an opinion from scratch. Now, that is not the way that this book is going to be read over the long term. That, people who are coming to this book 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, will be much more open to actually having their mind changed, or like having an opinion formed from the book. And so I think that the long term will be really good. I think it's an incredible case study and biography just to learn about how do people accomplish such incredible things, and what is the interplay between the forces of light and darkness inside of a person. And I think that as far as effect on the company, it'll probably be similar in the short term, very little, but over the longer term, I think it does draw, continues to draw more talent that is aligned with the missions, and helps to inform people who are coming to the company exactly what the atmosphere that they're signing up for is, so that hopefully they can be a little bit more prepared. And I think that those are positive effects in the long run.
Yeah. Richard, did you want to say something? I saw you wanted to jump in a little earlier. No? I think from my standpoint, I think I agree sort of with a short-term, long-term premise. The way he forgot his dad joke, producer wife in the private chat. I love it. The way I perceive it, and again, I could be wrong. This could be sort of my bias, but I do think that there is something to be said about, if you look at it specifically from a business leadership standpoint, and how his perseverance and his never give up attitude and his ability to surround himself with incredibly talented people. If I'm a competitor reading that, I don't know what to do, right? I don't know. I'm not really quite sure what to do as far as trying to compete with somebody of his caliber and the teams that he surrounded himself in. I'm reading the book and I'm saying, okay, and I try to read some chapters from the perspective of, say, a competitor. And I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, short of me doing this, I don't think I can build a culture that can allow me to compete with this guy. So like, I wonder if that's planted in, if one of his competitors are reading this book, I wonder if any of them are thinking, okay, is this going to be a problem for me? Like, is this truly a problem for me? Like, has this made me step outside the box? And I think for people that, and I think there's two camps. I think you have a camp of like 10% are, people like us that are very much in the very super plugged in the know and are biased towards the positive end of the spectrum. And then you have the other 10%, which are very plugged in and in the know, but they're in the very negative side of the spectrum, right? I think the middle 80 will read this book, and I think this is just sort of my gut feel. I think they'll come away with something similar. Well, they'll read and say, holy crap, this guy has a lot of flaws, but it doesn't seem like he gives up. So I feel like maybe he's got companies that are going to succeed because he has a sort of track record of these things succeeding, and he's not stopping. That's what I like to think I would take away, at least for people that are reading this from a business perspective. So that's how I'm thinking about this. Let me end with this last question, and we'll go to Q&A. Has your personal opinion of him changed after reading this book? We'll start with Tony and go the other way. We'll go clockwise this time.
No, I've always thought he was like a strange dude, so I feel like it provided more context on that. But I would say no, this hasn't really changed my opinion of Elon. That said, like having had a number of friends like in life who had Asperger's, it just made me recognize that even more. I mean, they're like recognizing that bit of like the friends I mentioned in Elon and vice versa has been like probably an interesting part of like my arm's length sort of relationship with Elon, I guess.
Alex?
A little bit. Before the Twitter X, I was in a Tesla and SpaceX and whatnot. And I was behind Elon on when he took on a lot of those challenges, but on the free speech and Twitter X, he's backed into a corner on that, and I think there were some poor decisions that were made from a personal standpoint. People were saying bad things about him that I would sort of dismiss, but reading the book, there was a lot of credence to what the haters were saying at the time.
Hans?
Yeah, I feel similarly. You know, I have viewed Elon as a human being, and I knew, especially anecdotally, I've known, you know, people from South Africa, and some of the most horrific stories from childhood that I've ever heard my entire life are men who grew up in South Africa. And so I kind of had a pretty good sense that was, you know, a big part of what drove Elon. And, but seeing the way that those dynamics actually play out, you know, in the stories in the book just helped me to, I feel like, deepen that sense of how much he is a real human being. You know, he's got all those flaws. There are those negative tendencies that he needs to actively resist, and he needs those good people around him to help him rein in. And yeah, like I think that Kara, the interview that she did with Isaac or Walter, I hate her style of like asking him a question, trying to bait him a little bit, and then like, okay, you didn't answer it the way that I wanted you to, and like rushing him. But that being said, like the overall, I think there's a lot of valid criticism that she has for Elon and his, he's kind of at the level right now where he's flirting with the line of not being properly tethered to reality and having his negative impulses properly in check. And so I think that, you know, really was just fleshed out a lot more. And then, yeah, like Alex said, seeing some of the questionable decisions that were made that people called out, it's like, yeah, there was really not nearly as much thought put into those decisions as I thought maybe there were at the time. I had given Elon too much of the benefit of the doubt, and it really was, you know, thoughtless, poorly calculated, and definitely lots of room for improvement.
Maybe?
I was going to use exactly the same word as Hans. I don't think that my feelings have changed, but they've deepened. And I'm glad that it's a more nuanced picture. I think that the people, like you said, 10% we know who he is and 10% hate him. But I think also the super, super, super Elon worshippers, I hope that they tone down a bit when they read the book, because I think that that's the bad thing in our community. All the people who get really, really aggressive when you say anything negative about Elon. He's a human being. He has flaws and he has fantastic sides. And I think that this book really brings out both. And I think that that's very important.
Richard. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm good. I'm done.
This is for CM. My ceiling isn't the best, but it's up there. After
we're kind of going downhill here a little bit.
We're near the end, so it has to kind of get to the bottom of the hill. Right?
That was really good. That was a great save. Well done.
I would say, you know, I felt real empathy for him, and I was thinking, you know, thank God for him, but I would never want to step in his shoes, and that's what it made me feel. You know, I knew the story, but it just hit more of an emotional tone to me.
Yeah, it definitely humanized him a lot. You know, I think it was a very healthy exercise for folks that maybe, you know, kind of like what Hans alluded to, is that, you know, in moments where I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, after reading the book, I'm like, yeah, that was not that I shouldn't have done that. I should have tried to put the benefit of the doubt to the side and actually analyze the situation for what it is instead of trying to justify it. And I think that opened a lot of eyes for me. But I think at the same time, it's quite healthy it's quite healthy behavior. And I think this is something that everybody benefits from, is to be more questioning and be more prodding and not take everything at face value. And I think sort of the book being out there is a good lesson for that, is that, hey, like, you know, like all of you have said, it's a human being that seems like he's trying his best, and he's exercising a lot of demons going through that journey. And sometimes those demons get the better of him. And then because of his leverage and his power, he has an outsized impact, both on a positive and a negative front. But I do think I think it reinforces how much people are a product of their surroundings and the environment as well. It's so much. And it doesn't matter who you are. You're not immune to your environment and your surroundings. But I think at the same time, it's sort of, he's a person that I do believe he's trying, like, from my perspective, and I think, you know, everybody agrees on here, I think his intentions are pure. I think he's definitely doing it for the right reasons. And it was the one thing I wrote a while ago on Twitter. I was like, he's like a laser beam. He's like humanity's most powerful laser beam that can fix things at an incredible rate. But sometimes you point out laser beam at things that don't need fixing, and then shit breaks. And I think that's like a kind of a crude way of describing the kind of person he is. But I think it's sort of like, I think it fleshes that picture out for him. So, I mean, I really do want to, I think it takes a lot of balls to do this kind of thing, to kind of allow your dirty laundry to be out there and for people to view you as a whole human being. And I'm struck by the one comment he made that, I forget what the question was from an interviewer, but they're like, you know, what do you think is overrated? And then Elon said, I'm overrated, right? And I remember him distinctly saying that. I'm like, I wonder why he said that. And I read the book. I'm like, maybe he wants people to stop freaking looking at him like this do no wrong person. Maybe he's like, dude, I'm kind of fucked up. Can you just leave me alone? Can you just let me work on the rockets and not freak out every time I say something insane on Twitter like everybody else is doing? Just freaking don't pay attention to me, right? Let me be me. And I wonder how much of that is maybe desperation too. Like, I wonder if there's a lot of desperation there, because I wonder if he never wanted to be in that situation, and now he's ended up in that situation. He's trying to navigate through it as best he can, but he's stumbling over himself quite a bit. So yeah, it's super humanizing, fascinating person. I think we're lucky to have him around. And I think it's also very important to ensure that we all view him for what it is, which is a human being with a lot of power that sometimes make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can end up impacting other people. So yeah. All right. Q&A. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
We'll do it for like 15, 20 minutes or so, up to the 2-hour mark. Okay. Before we do that, I want to give a huge shout out to Dylan Loomis. Do you guys know who Dylan Loomis is? Is from Electrified.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Him and I, he was on my channel a couple months ago now, I think. And, you know, we struck up a friendship. Him and I both went to Penn State, and, you know, we help each other out a little bit. And then he sent me a gift. You know what he sent me, you guys? So this is a Penn State football helmet that is signed by the starting quarterback of Penn State. This is insane. This is ridiculous. Dylan, you're a maniac. This guy's going to be a stud. And he, like, I don't know why you did this, but thank you so much. You definitely didn't have to do this. Ridiculous. But I just want to give a huge shout out to Dylan. Make sure you go follow him on Electrified. This is an insane gift. Thank you so much, man. Anyway,
Dylan is the reason I have the Tesla tequila bottle. I won his fantastic gift basket.
Wow.
Some year ago. Yeah, and this huge box arrived to Sweden with a tequila glass and a tequila bottle and some other stuff. It was super, super
How
nice.
awesome is that?
I would verify, by the way, the signature on the helmet, because it looks a lot like Dylan's handwriting to me. But that's just my opinion.
The note says the helmet is signed by Drew Aller and authenticated by PSA. So listen, I don't have the actual document, but I'm just going to take his word for it, because this is such a sweetheart for sending this. Drew Aller, number 15.
Yeah, eventually you will learn to hate the PSA, by the way.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I just want to say one thing before the Q&A. When you were talking about the interview with Walter Isaacson, I want to say I listened to the Spaces when you and Hans, when you two were interviewing Walter, and I thought that was so good. I had just started reading the book, and I was kind of bored in the beginning because I knew so much of the stuff already, and I thought his way of writing was kind of boring. But I thought that discussion was excellent. So
Awesome.
thank you for that.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, thank you to Hans for helping me co-host. I mean, it was one of those things where I think him and I talked for the first half hour, we asked him questions, and Walter's just such a fountain of information. You ask him one question and and then during the interview, he's like, I think Farza wants me to keep going. So I'm like, hurry up. I'm like, no, the questions can take like one or two from people, but you keep talking, bro.
And he was so sweet. He said, I'm just going to stay here. You people are so important. Yeah. I'm going to take everybody's question. I said, my God, he's going to be here for 24 hours. Yeah, he was so generous.
Yeah.
So really the real question is, when is round 2?
Yeah. We got to ask him. I'm going to give him a break. He's been freaking on interviews left and right, but I'd love to have him back. It's like the way make sure you check it out on the channel, by the way. We interviewed Walter Isaacson. Should be a week or so ago, I think it went live on the channel. And no, about a week ago. And just how generous he is with his time. This is the guy who wrote the biography of Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein. He ran Time and CNN. This is a very accomplished individual. And then two bozos like Hans and I, we get to talk to him. The fuck? What is that? It's crazy.
And he thought it was important. He thought he really genuinely thought it was important to let all the Tesla nerds listen and ask questions. And it was fantastic.
Yeah. And the panel just asked so many great questions. Like every question was phenomenal. Yeah. It was fantastic. But thank you for saying that, Mimi. I think, that's the really cool thing about X and Spaces is like that you can have that sort of interaction. It's very unique to that platform. Okay. Let's do Q&A so we can answer some questions. All right. Producer wife. Damn, I'm out of practice. I usually would have said a thing and the question came up. Sorry. All right, Pete, question. After reading the book, are you more or less concerned that Elon could go off the rails in the future? By off the rails, I mean in a way which could significantly damage Tesla, etc. Fantastic question. Who wants to take this one on first? Go ahead, Millie.
More. In the end of the book, Walter writes quite a bit about Elon's increasing tendency to believe in conspiracy theories and kind of disappearing into science fiction grasps of the world, and I think that's kind of worrying. He forms an opinion, and it feels like when he has that opinion, it's very, very hard to change it. So yes, I think I'm more concerned.
Who else has I have a few thoughts here. Who else wants to go?
Yeah, I would just say that I would like to just keep an eye on who are the people around him and how much access does it seem like they have. I did feel like, yes, I'm a little bit more concerned about his potential to do that if he gets completely untethered. As long as we see people like Franz and like Lars and like Kimball, regular meetings with people like Larry Ellison, if his mom still is a prominent person in his life, these kind of forces that bring him back to reality, then I'm much less concerned about those things. But it did give me that just awareness that I need to monitor whether or not those people seem like they have the ability to speak into his life or not.
Alex, and then Tony.
Elon is going to pick fights. He's going to go out looking for trouble, and he's going to pick fights. He always has. And he's going to punch. He's going to go and punch that bully in the nose. He's going to look for somebody more powerful, more dominating. He's going to go pick a fight, punch that bully in the nose, and clean up the mess afterwards. So yeah, that's his attitude. That's what he's always done, and he's gonna go. He could take on China. He could take on some regulator in Washington, and he's gonna get a ton of bricks come down on him.
Tony?
I guess it has me a little bit more concerned. I'd be much more concerned if I owned SpaceX or Twitter, because there's part of me that thinks that like Tesla might have reached the point where it has its own sort of escape velocity from Elon. Like I think Tesla is past the point where it's like it can continue in some ways without Elon, or even if it had to like cut ties with Elon. So it's not, from that perspective, I'm not as worried. But if I own, shares in SpaceX or Twitter, I'd be a bit more perturbed, I guess, because those are definitely things that would go down with the captain.
Richard?
I love whiteboards. They're remarkable.
Whoa. Damn.
Anyway,
dude, this is what happens when they don't do a community forum for like 2 months. You have like
I know. He has withdrawal symptoms.
I've stored them up. Yeah, you know what it kind of makes me think. And again, I've thought about this in the past, and it's a concern I have about him. It just makes me more concerned about his health, physical and mental health. He's under a lot of pressure, good or bad. And my concern is at some point in time that will get to him, and it's not something he can control, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has me more concerned about the repercussions of him being him at a larger scale with more leverage and more power. And I think as long as he has that family support system around him, people that will at least try to fight him on things. And after this book is released, and I don't know if he watches content like this, but my guess is this book will probably make people that are willing to voice their opinion against Elon to feel more empowered, because now there's more people out there saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't be freaking perhaps indirectly enabling some of the things that are happening, where maybe the feedback mechanism that sort of exists around him with this media landscape could be like, yo, dude, like we have your back, but this is kind of crazy. Like maybe you need to like lay off a little bit. I wonder if those mechanisms, as long as he's viewing the, progressing through life as an algorithm, one of the inputs should be, hey, people that love your products and really have your back are kind of upset about this. So maybe you should take this a little bit more seriously. So I wonder if that is going to become a little bit more prevalent. So I want to say I'm more or less concerned. I just think as the landscape changes, it's going to be very important to see if there will be adjustment phases to that landscape, where it's sort of lagged thus far a little bit, especially with the X stuff. It hasn't reached from my perspective, it hasn't reached like a cataclysmic event. It's just been uncomfortable and disruptive, but he's disruptive in nature. So it's pretty interesting. All right, let's do the next question. And that was good. Oopsie daisies. That's a great name. Does everyone here recognize how falsely Elon is portrayed by media? They do the same thing with the politicians you think you love or hate. Wake up. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty common theme that we've covered quite a bit on this channel, is that Elon a lot of people are commonly misrepresented by the media, and Elon especially so, especially now that he's a competitor against mainstream media with X, formerly known as Twitter. Who has some thoughts on this?
What I was going to say is that, back in the days when there was no social media, I remember there was a proverb that was considered the source. And and that was when there was no confusion, or the confusion was a lot less. I just think you have to consider the source. So I always look, whatever the story, I always look who has produced that story. And based upon my belief system or opinion about the source, I then incorporate the substance into my own beliefs. So yeah, I think they misportray him, but I think you have to be careful with media, and you have to look at who's writing it.
Yes.
And diversify your sources as much as you can. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I would just say that, if you've ever been the subject of a story, or when you see a media piece about something that you know a lot about, have they ever gotten it right? Ever? So just remember, you need to generalize that to all stories. That, maybe they're 30% right if you're generous, 40, 50. They're definitely not 100% right. And so just don't take the narrative that they're trying to weave at face value.
I can't reinforce just how important that is. And this became super obvious with me when I was following Tesla super closely, especially during the 2010s. And, certain presidential candidates I would follow, like Andrew Yang, that I was super into at the time, and how and just multiple things. And I'm like, and I see just the headlines, and I'm like, this is just so wrong. It's just wrong, straight up. And so that instilled a lot of doubt in me as a person when it comes to media in general. It was very eye-opening.
And in general, like in big media or newspapers or in the old days, the person who wrote the story wouldn't write the headline either. So you'd have a disconnect between the writer and the headline writer.
That's still how it is in many
Happens
places now. Like I think a lot of the stories that are negative about Elon, or at least on their face with a headline, the writer of it didn't put that in there. And then when you follow through, it becomes clear because that negative part of the headline is like buried 2 paragraphs from the bottom. It wasn't the main topic of the thing that the original writer intended. Yeah.
The one thing, all of the stories with Elon either start out with the world's richest man or the billionaire, because understanding the system of value we live in and maximizing your value within that system is somehow bad, because the only way to do that is to take that money from somebody else, not build value for people. So I think there's a lot of, that's one of the big hangups in the media, and it just keeps getting reinforced and reinforced.
And I think that's like on its face wrong too, because I think anyone who believes that Elon Musk or any of these people who are like public figures where we know what their net worth is the real richest person in the world, like, got a bridge to sell you. The real richest people in the world don't want you to know how rich they really are. Like, like Vladimir Putin, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, whoever the heirs are of the fortunes made in the 1800s, like Vanderbilt, etc. Those are the real richest people in the world. It's just they didn't really create anything, so they don't want people to know how wealthy they are.
I always am constantly reminded, now that I've been doing this YouTube thing for a while, the headline of an article is literally no different than a YouTube title and thumbnail. It's exactly the same thing. And exactly. Oh my God. And I can't tell you how much I try not to do that. And I know the freaking thumbnail for this video, I did it. Me looking at the Elon Musk video, like all concerned, because it's like, wow, what are we going to talk about? So there's a lot of shit that goes into this. And then I'm like, okay, is that misleading? Is that not misleading? And anyway, we'll do a whole YouTube seminar in a different video. There's a lot of thoughts there. It's the media has become such a fascinating topic for me to think through and talk about that. It's anyway. All right, next question. And Senti with the penguin. My question is about AI regulation. Are we able to physically regulate AI by regulating server farms? What are some suggestions on how we can regulate emerging AI and LLMs? So I want to set this question aside. I really appreciate your question, but I want to make sure we talk specifically about the book, unless somebody thinks that there is something related to the book in this question that we can merge in. I don't want to get us too much off topic here.
Yeah,
anybody
I'd say
have any thoughts?
Just watch the panel with Netanyahu and the OpenAI guy. You can trace power and GPUs.
I have that video on my channel as well. You just type AI safety panel, and it was posted like 5-6 days ago. That's a great call out. Thank you, Santi. I appreciate you with your question, but we want to make sure we don't get off course here. All right.
The only thing that
question.
I will comment on there, just to bring this in, because we haven't really talked about it at all yet, is the fact that Elon is very Elon needed to kind of create some drama with his purchase of Twitter and then turning it into X. I think his appetite for drama is going to be pretty much consumed with AI moving forward. And so he's not going to have to manufacture anything. Like, this is a huge issue. Yeah, it's going to consume a lot of his time, attention, energy moving forward. So other than that, to say that nobody really knows the right answer to that question, Elon's going to be spending a lot of time on it, and that's going to be very dramatic.
Yes.
Awesome.
Like it says in the book, it's the current shitstorm. So
yes.
Elon dives into it.
All right. Next question. And James Dillon, member of the channel community. Welcome back, James. That's why he's got that cool little symbol next to his name. Thank you, James. Producer wife, question. I find it very curious, quote unquote, that Elon and Tesla never expound on the dollars that exist in food service at charger stations. Elon's brother has extensive experience in food service. Yeah, again, not related to the book necessarily, but is there any comments we want to do on this question?
The Tesla diner. So that's the first in the, I assume it's going to be a future model of the new charging stations that will include food service and some entertainment. It's being built in LA.
I mean, I think it's already there. Like, you don't even need to go that far to build a Tesla diner. You just, well, I guess it would take some. I've often had this thought of, like, if the Tesla is a smartphone with wheels, what functionality in the Tesla that you could do in a smartphone works better in the Tesla as is, right? And pretty much everything you could think of doesn't really work until you have full self-driving autonomy, like, watching TV or playing video games or whatever, or it only works when it's parked, so it's not really a car. But the one app I can think of is Grubhub, because the Tesla has better knowledge and information about where you are, where you're going, how soon you're going to get there, when you'll be able to pick your stuff up, all that other stuff. And, as far as the back end of it, it's kind of like, create some kind of restaurant affiliate program. Anyone that's within a quarter mile of a supercharger, give them the opportunity to sell their stuff through the Tesla app. They've already got your credit card. It's just one other thing that you can purchase together with paying for your supercharging. Maybe there's even like some kind of bundle deal, like buy X amount of kilowatt hours, you get like this discount on an In-N-Out burger.
Yeah. Let me take it one step further, and I'll throw this out to Mimi here. We're not that far away from a world where Tesla, in theory, you'll be able to hop in your self-driving Tesla. You're going to put in Tesla Diner 20 minutes from here, right? And then when you put in that destination, you don't even have to open the app. The screen will be like, what would you like to order? And then you right on the car screen, right? You type in your thing, or you select your things. And then by the time you get to the parking spot that the car will put you in, a Tesla bot will come out with a tray of food, and it will just give it to you. And you're going to be like, thank you. This was very automated. And you'll eat delicious robot-made food.
That is so passé, to be honest. What's really going to happen, you're going to order the food, and it's going to be delivered to you in your car. It will be made and delivered. Tell us something to you. You open your glove box, and there's your sandwich.
That would be incredible.
The car that picks you up is going to be a dining car, and all your stuff is going to be under silver plates. So you sit in it with your date, you pick it up, and it just drives you around the coolest drive in the city while you're eating your meal.
What's amazing about this is, in the private chat, producer wife's like, I'm sorry, but I want food service at the chargers, and that's why she brought up this question. And you're getting all the answers right now, baby. You're going to be able to get food 12 ways to Sunday. It's going to be fantastic. Go ahead, Mimi. I think you were raising your hand before.
Yeah, I want to ask, I mean, if you stay at the superchargers in the States, are most close to places where you can eat and go to the bathroom and stuff like that? Because driving through Europe this summer, obviously Tesla, they have their superchargers next to very fashionable hotels, far off the main road, or some strange parking lot in the middle of nowhere. So location. I would have been happy if there would have been a restroom and something to buy to eat, not necessarily made by Tesla, but I think that they started early and they have not bought the best land. So I hope they're going to improve on that, because right now, we went into some of the luxury hotels and had ridiculously expensive Perrier and cafe, but and it was nice, but it was not the most efficient way to travel, even if I enjoyed it.
I was going to say, in the U.S., it's the opposite. They got first choice of the spots, so they have the best choice, the best spots.
And the network effect is going to make it like better over time, where like the people who have the best land or the best spots will now want superchargers and level 2 chargers to come there.
Yes.
And I think the biggest expansion is going to be level 2 chargers over time, well, at least until we have full self-driving. Like level 2 chargers, the value of them probably goes down as we get more full self-driving. But with manual driving, like level 2 chargers are very much underrated.
But I think that the problem in Europe is that we have so many functioning charger service networks. So Tesla isn't as dominant here.
So
and you don't have
I've
nearly
been
as
to
much
several
land.
superchargers where like the supercharger was the first thing built there, and the first time I went there it was like a dirt lot, and then over the course of 18 months, someone built a gas station next to it, and now there's a restaurant next to it. So that's its own way of driving development too, which is really
build
interesting.
it and they will come.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're going to be going there anyway.
Yeah.
You know, the car's going to take you there anyway. Yeah,
I'm impressed by your baseball knowledge.
All right. Go ahead, Richard. Yeah.
I was going to say, and they're buying commercial property that I know in Southern California to build service centers and delivery centers, and I'm sure those will incorporate other services to generate additional revenue.
Oh,
if I was to,
go ahead, Farzad.
No, go ahead.
Oh, on the cargo side with like the mega chargers for semi trucks, it's gonna be even bigger, I think, because every mega charger or semi charger is just a few steps away, like a few slots away from becoming just a dedicated cargo hub, and like that more so than robo-taxis, I think lends itself to a vertically integrated model. Because I mean, just like if you want to maximize uptime, they really should just have a system where the trucks get to a charging station, they plug in, they swap out, a different truck hops onto the load, tolls it away, so that it just keeps on going. And then every charging station also becomes a place where if you still have drivers can hop out and hot swap with other drivers, so the trucks just keep going nonstop. And then that naturally leads to, well, these drivers probably need like dorm rooms where they could crash at, so they can like sleep and take 10 hours off and then wake up and just hop into the next truck that needs a driver. Like, just that's something that's been in my mind for a bit. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably very fair to expect Tesla to start McDonald's and everything. It's just start buying, like Richard said, start buying up land, and just really your company's valuation comes from being a landowner more than anything over time. But that's not the case because they're building freaking robots. So, that's going to destroy that. So, all right, last question. And Jan FM, Jan Farzad Misbahi. Wow, that's a crazy last name. Question: did you guys have the impression that lying or bending reality forward, fitting the path of the mission, has been a problem or will be more in the future? Sorry, let me try reading that again. Did you guys have the impression that lying or bending reality forward, fitting the path of the mission, has been a problem or will be more in the future? I'm so sorry. Can somebody help me understand what this question might mean?
Like Tesla, when they showed that video, that turned out that it wasn't a real video because they wanted to show more progress that they had made.
The FSD video.
Something
where they're
like
sort
that.
of like, yeah. I mean, what marketing campaign isn't exactly that? Are there marketing campaigns out there that don't try to bend reality forward in a way? Or like say things that are maybe I don't even know what the question means.
I don't think it will be. I don't think there will be a problem that you try to make things look better than they really are. I mean, what is the mission? I mean, the mission is to transfer the world to sustainable energy, and if we do that, and it's very visible that we're doing that. And SpaceX needs to get Starship into orbit. If it blows up, everybody knows. It's hard to paint that in a good way. So no, I don't think that's a problem.
I'm guessing the most useful way to think of this comment or this question is in the context of what if we have a future where we're just stuck at 99% done with FSD indefinitely, and it's just always nonstop, 2 months away, 6 months away, and then before we know it, it's like 5 years from now, and it's so good that it works and everyone's using it, but it's not got every possible case quite yet. But or like just the long march of nines, right? Maybe that's the best place to think of where that might apply. But Because
I kind of
how many nines really before we get approved or before everyone's comfortable? I think it's more a question of time than nines. Like I could see a period where, like, you know, it's software ready, we're at that safety margin where most everyone's comfortable, but it's then another 5 years just because that's how long it takes for the bureaucracy to settle in. And in the meantime, getting a ticket for sleeping while the robot's driving becomes the equivalent of getting a speeding ticket, you know?
Okay, Hans, that's a great point.
Yeah, I kind of think about the question in the context of the reality distortion field that, you know, people talk about with Steve Jobs. And that is part of, you know, creating an incredible future that looks different than today. And, you know, a lot of people accuse Elon of fraud, but there's a very real line between saying something that you know is like material false, like, you know, the Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes examples where, you know, they were making claims that they knew to be false, hoping that they could accomplish something in the future. And I think, you know, Elon really believes when he says something, he actually believes it. Now, you know, read the book if you want to see how tightly those things correlate to reality sometimes versus others. But I think that it's just part of the package, and you don't get Elon, you don't get Tesla, you don't get SpaceX, you don't get these crazy ambitious, like no one in the world in their right mind would go after these missions without that reality distortion field being interwoven inside of that. And so, yes, it is, you know, it's kind of a risk. Things that he's working towards and honestly believes are going to happen not pan out the way that he thinks or in the time frame that he thinks. Well, yeah, we've seen that like over and over again, but we also see impossible things being turned into merely late. And so, yeah, it's just part of the journey.
I was going to say you can't have great success with immodest goals. So the goals have to be like out there to get you know, to reach. And so, yeah, so maybe it is a distortion. I don't think most of it's done with malice or anything like that. I think it's just trying to strive for the farthest they can, you know, get to.
Yeah. Elon's always had that mission, that vision out there, those goals. And then one year he'll say, well, this is our goal and this is how we're going to get there. And that path that he forward fit to that goal, that didn't work, but they still take the steps and gain the perspective, and then they find a new path, and eventually they get there to that goal. At least in Tesla and SpaceX. Twitter, not so sure, but Tesla and SpaceX seem to have worked because when he first laid out the dream and the vision and the mission, and laid out a path and said, well, this should only take like 4 years and we'll do it this way. It's given the haters a lot of ammo that he's lying, and he said we'd have this, and he said we'd do this, and he said we could do that. And you're like, well, there was a vision and a mission, and they got there, and it wasn't exactly how he dreamed it up 10 years ago. It's what they could build, and that's what it's a little different, but I mean, it still fits the mission. So,
yeah.
On Twitter, I believe they'll have a hard time, significantly harder than Tesla and SpaceX. To the question, the vision for Twitter is too much, and it's got too much competition, and yeah, it's too hard. But Tesla and SpaceX shouldn't be a problem. But X and then XAI and some of the other crazy stuff, some of it won't hit. There'll be some solar roof. There'll be some failures along the way.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. There will be failures along the way, and especially since X is hitting so much of the public domain, which Elon tends to not say value as much from a emotional perspective as, say, getting a specific thing done. It will cause, you know, more harm than good. But maybe in the long term, a lot of those steps will come to fruition, and perhaps those will bear fruit. But who knows? It's going to be whatever it ends up being. It's going to be a fascinating story, and I think that's really what this whole thing has been. So, Tony, Alex, Hans, Mimi, Not Legal Advice, thank you all so much. Any parting words from the crew before we sign off?
It was great to get back together again. We always love it. And thank you for the opportunity, Farzad, and thanks to everybody who joined and everybody who watched.
Yes.
Read the book. It's worth it.
I want to end with my favorite quote from the book, and it fits very well with what Alex said. Kimball refused to talk about Twitter. I really don't give a shit about Twitter, he said. It's just a pimple on the ass of what should be your impact on the world.
What a beautiful quote, huh? Only
But
a
I
quote
think
a
it's
brother
true.
could say. Yeah. Yeah. Only his brother could say that.
But I agree.
Go ahead, Alex.
The other quote was on Elon that Elon made in the book was when the workers from Tesla China came up to him and asked him how to make the country more innovative. And his answer was to challenge authority. And that was the one quote in the whole book that stood out more than anything else.
It was funny on so many levels.
Yeah.
There are people who thought that would get the book banned in China, right?
Yeah, I read something like that it might get him in trouble. Yeah.
It's number one on the bestseller list in Sweden this week.
But if you want to be innovative,
on Amazon.
That's one thing I fixate on sometimes, especially because I feel like when I log into Twitter, for whatever reason, I get a lot of posts in my stream that are from like these Chinese nationalist types, like people who are just really hyping up China. And maybe it's an effect of like speech being less regulated on Twitter to the extent that it is regulated in like Instagram or whatever, that more of them are showing up. But it does have me wondering, like, what does Elon know about China that I don't, or that we don't, that like the media that we're made to consume here in the US doesn't expose us to? Because when we talk about like questioning media narratives, like the one about China is one that's been fomented for a very, very long time. So it's interesting, but it's a slippery slope thinking could lead to some very uncomfortable places.
Yeah. My real quick, since we're on this, my favorite part of the book, which is weird, is when that part of the book where they were at SpaceX and they were outside, and all of a sudden Elon started like, okay, I need to go somewhere. He started running towards the parking lot, and then people are like, yeah, I wonder if he's doing that because he wants to instill a lot of like people to really like hustle, like he's running towards the parking lot. And then Walter asked him, why'd you do that? It's like, forgot my sunscreen. I love that so much. It was because it brings back my time to Tesla, because people would walk so fast, and it was on purpose, because they wanted to see, okay, are you able to catch up? And then him saying, I forgot my sunscreen. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. All right. Let's end it there. Thank you all so much again. Appreciate everybody's time. Love you guys so much. Thank you, everybody in the comments, for keeping the conversation super productive and awesome as always. Thank you to the mods for keeping the conversations perfect as always. And last but not least, the most beautiful person in the world, producer wife. Thank you so much for the excellent work as always. Great to have you back. Great to have everybody back. And who knows, maybe we'll do another one of these pretty soon. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one. Take it easy. Bye-bye.